Hello everyone and anyone that might have accidentally stumbled onto this video and those that came here purposely. Filiku here, and in anticipation for the Gathering Storm expansion of Civilization 6, I am going to talk about Civilization 3. Well, to be fair, Civilization 3 Complete, which most notably includes the Conquest expansion. This video is primarily meant to give my thoughts on whether or not the game still holds water today, and casually compare it to Civilization 6 simply because it's the modern iteration of the Civilization series. Sorry, Sid Meier's Civilization. This is top of the line here, not some clone of the real thing, which is generally the impression I get when I see people's names in front of games like Tom Clancy Presents Plants vs. Zombies, which isn't a real game, but I imagine would be a very interesting take on the Plants vs. Zombies series. Anyways, let's get right to it and talk about Civ 3's presentation. At this point, presentation is the general category that I'll use to consider a game's visual and audio elements. In regards to Civ 3, I didn't tweak the settings, so I kind of played the game as it was, presented in the moment that I loaded it up, and for the most part, it looks just as I remember it looking back in the early 2000s. The game initially came out in 2001, with Conquest released in 2003. In essence, the game does look like it was made in the early 2000s. The map is flat and pretty static. The only dynamic features are the movement of units, in my case the non-stop automated movements of slave workers, and then there are a few environmental features that make the world seem a little more livelier, like disease from jungle environments, and every now and then you get to see the active volcanoes. But for the most part, that's about it that really stood out in terms of the liveliness of the map. Ultimately, the thing that got me the most was simply how static the map feels at this point. It's not that the map doesn't change over time visually, it's that no matter how much of the change there is from the ancient period to the modern period in regards to what you're doing with the landscape and how your civilization is looking, it's all just sort of motionless. And well, at this point, there's just not much to see there. After seeing the dynamic and liveliness presented in Civ 6, going back to Civ 3 just doesn't quite present the compelling world that it used to. The sounds of the game are, I suppose, rudimentary. The Civ leaders don't talk. The sounds made by each unit are okay at first, but do start to become rather inane after dealing with stacks and stacks of units. The same holds true for the animations. Yes, I realize you can outright eliminate the animations altogether in the settings, but doing that really made the game lose any semblance of liveliness that it had for me. Great for cutting down on time spent playing, not so much for trying to create an engaging playthrough. I love the music, especially the industrial age music, and it provides the right kind of ambient sound that avoids being distracting and complements the game environment. There is enough unit variety that you're not seeing the same things over and over again as you progress through the technological periods, but get bogged down in a period and those stacks of archers and swordsmen do start to become tiresome. I love that cities do grow and change as you advance through the tech, but compared to the districts of Civilization 6, the cities just seem rather lackluster now. Again, no issue back when I initially played it, and admittedly, Civ 6 improved on city development so drastically that the comparison simply isn't fair. In terms of gameplay, Civ 3 really breaks down to two things: science and military. Everything else is really just complementary to advancing through the tech trees, building enough units to roll through other civs, and this can get pretty damn hard on the higher difficulties, but ultimately it's just a matter of keeping up with the AI technologically, building your armies as they're worth double or even triple their weight in just plain stacks of units, and exploring the horrible, very limited abilities of the AI in both strategic and diplomatic manners. I mean, there is city building elements to it, improving your civilization's infrastructure, and well, that's pretty much what the bulk of my playthroughs consisted of. Even when I was playing the game back in the early 2000s, and what it broke down to in my most recent gameplay. In my mind, Civ 3 really is a one-trick pony, but it does do that trick extremely well. So this leads me to immersion. I honestly had to make a concentrated effort to pull away from the game. What I mean is, I became obsessed with completely finishing the game. I don't know if I felt that I was actually an immortal Caesar leading the Roman civilization through the centuries, but I definitely felt immersed in the gameplay. The phrase that goes along with this series is well deserved. Just one more turn pretty much sums it up. That holds as true for Civ 3 when I first played it to it now. I felt slighted by the AI when they signed an embargo against me. I wanted retribution when they dared to take one of my workers, and I boiled when they settled on lands that I deemed mine. This all made me push for the extra turn that really never comes, because there will always be one more turn until it's 6 in the morning and you realize you have to go to work in an hour. However, once I completed the game, I didn't want to touch the game again. One, because I didn't want to get hooked on another match, and two, because, well, I know that there is a much better iteration of it in the series. And I just felt that going back to this game was kind of taking a step back in the full experience of what Civilization has to offer now. So when it comes to longevity, I think the fact that I'm making a video in 2019 talking about how obsessively I played this game for the past 4 days speaks volumes about the longevity of the game. But when I take the time to consider if I really would play this game more than once or twice to play it for what it is, I would have to take a pass on it. It's not that the game isn't worth playing even now, or that it won't hold me captive as it usually does. It's that there is really only so many times I can enjoy rolling through the AI. Admittedly, I can try to do one of the other victory conditions, but just not interested in those. That is primarily because Civ 6 is available and it does a much better job at essentially making those other victory conditions more appealing. Nevertheless, I would say that this game has aged surprisingly well for me, and even in 2019, I can still enjoy it for what it is, fully aware that there is a more superior all around option available. Oh, and I really like the scenarios, especially the one where you get to play during the Napoleonic Wars and the one that you get to play during the Middle Ages. They each have these own unique conditions and different kind of tech trees that I thought was one of the best features of the Conquest expansion. So, keeping in line with my ever evolving rating system, I give the game 3 out of 6 Civ advisors. It gets the military, science, and foreign advisors, because those are the aspects of the game I consider to be the most significant. The other advisors represent elements of the game that are merely complementary to those three aspects, and thus such are not as important in my mind. At the end of the day, this breaks down to a really enjoyable experience if I'm in the mood for some teching and conquering, which, of course, I usually am. Now it's time for me to return back to the last game that I started to make Shaka pay for a worker that he took, I think according to the game calendar, about 300 years ago. He's gonna take for taking that. He's gonna pay for taking that worker 300 years ago. So, anyways, that wraps things up for me. Till next time.